Well, hi, Jerome. I can see that you've got the concepts down. I'd like you to be a little more of a stickler for following directions for future, working with the assignment directions, and also the notes that I provide in the drafts reviews. So, I'm looking here, and it seems that there's kind of a jump between the first and second boxes in shades and tones, too. Your black technically is not a true black according to the RGB values. Those should be 000. And same with that last box in tones. For true gray, you need all three color values, R, G, and B, to be the same. Also observe that the tone scale varies in value. Your gradation of value looks good. In gradation of hue, the colors ought to be fully saturated, and I want you to go back to the discussion and see how I'm telling to do that. Pick from the top right corner of the color picker. And gradation of saturation looks pretty good. I'm wondering if those circles are perfect. Sharon, this is a great set of scales. Now, with your assignment 4, in the gradation of value there at left, it appears that there may be a hue shift from cyan to cyan blue between those two largest circles. And while I think that this gradation of hue is much improved, I do note when I take the color picker to it that there are some colors that aren't fully saturated ones. Good job with the gradation of saturation. Your value is quite constant there. Keely, this is a great set of scales. Now with your assignment 4 work, actually I'm trying to put the gradation of saturation on the right. When I take a look at this in grayscale, I see that the one that works best for that is the one with the cyan circles. I like your design ideas. They are varied and all make use of perfect circles. One thing with your gradation of hue, perhaps it could be that the interval might be greater so that the circles were easier to distinguish one from the other. John, this is a great set of scales. The only little thing I might suggest is checking the interval between the two leftmost boxes in shades. Your gradation of value looks okay, and I noticed that you've picked all fully saturated colors with your gradation in hue. With the gradation in saturation, hue ought to be constant, which is to say there should be only one hue in that composition. Also, I think you're going to get more control with value if you end in a gray versus in a tint, right? The tint's naturally going to be a lighter version of whatever color it is you start with. Zach, this really is quite a good set of scales. Let's take a look at tones. That ought to end at right in a gray. And a gray will have R, G, and B values all the same. It will be entirely neutral. So that gray ought to be the same value as the square with which you started there on the left. Let's see. Now, with assignment 4, I'd ask you to please leave titles off of your artwork for future. You can include the title in the post if you like, or even in the file naming if there's room. I've already made some notes for you about interval with regard to the gradation in hue, and with gradation and saturation you've done quite a good job of keeping value constant. Paulina, this really is quite a good set of scales. Let's see. One thing that you could work on here is constant value in tones. And something that I suggested to a student who was struggling with a similar matter was to investigate how the gradient tool works, Photoshop for example, and make a gradient between the color you want to start with and its grayscale equivalent. So you can make a copy of that file with a color, and then image mode grayscale, sample from that. And then your gradient will have a variety of colors that are all same value if the two colors you used to create the gradient were also the same value. Stephen, these scales look pretty good. Everything that is meant to match does, and your RGB values are good for black, white, and gray. Notice that the assignment's asking for 10 steps or more, so you're short of steps, and I'd like you to check that second square there in shades. Does it vary from the other colors in that scale with regard to hue? Now, speaking of hue, well, in your gradation of hue, you need to have all colors fully saturated, so the darker blue, like a navy, wouldn't work as that's not a saturated color. With your gradation of value, you have the right idea. Make sure you use perfect circles. And also, this needs to have constant hue, which means you can have blues or cyans, but not some of each. The gradation of saturation looks great. Hadley, this set of scales is right on. Everything looks good. Also, your assignment 4 looks correct, and you have a variety of interesting design ideas there. Rachel, things look quite good with your scales. You know, doing the grayscale test on tones, perhaps the value could be more constant there. Your assignment 4 looks good. All of the colors in the gradation of hue are fully saturated. However, I do not believe that all of those circles are perfect. I like the way that the gradation of value there on the left shows a line of circles that sort of disappear at one point into the background. It shows a sense of near and far in a way. Good job on the gradation of saturation. Hi, Travis. You know, you are going in the right direction with this set of scales. All of the boxes at left need to have the exact same RGB values. And I'm going to refer you to the first drafts review for some images I've put there showing how you can use the color picker and even type in the RGB values. Now, tints is meant to end in a pure white, shades should end in a true black, and tones should end in a gray, where the R, G, and B values are all the same. You've got some great design ideas here. The gradation of value is correct. With the gradation of hue, we're looking for fully saturated colors, so those should all be picked from the top rightmost corner of the color picker. With your gradation of saturation, well, hue is not entirely constant because you've added some green here. Another matter is that value is not constant, and you know, the gradation of value is actually also a gradation of saturation here. But the trick is, with this assignment for the gradation of saturation, to keep value constant, like in the tone scale. Adam, this is a good job with the scales. The only thing is, you should be using the same color to start with all three of them. So tints uses a different color, or hue, if you will, here. Notice that the tone scale is quite constant in value. Your gradation of value looks great. The gradation of hue should include colors that are all fully saturated, picked from the top rightmost corner of the color picker. The gradation of saturation looks to be correct. I would like to ask you to leave titles out of your work for future, and I want you to study up on resolution. There is an announcement that deals with computers and related issues. Look to the bottom there and study that to be sure that you get good resolution with your files.